of the biggest reasons why the BC Liberals were unable to win a fifth straight majority in BC's May election was their refusal to change the outdated political fundraising and campaign financing laws. Unlike the federal rules and rules of every other province, BC had no limit on corporate, union, and individual donations to political parties. It's something that even garnered the attention of the New York Times of all publications. As somewhat of a lukewarm supporter of the BC Liberals, because I see them as the only viable option that isn't the NDP destroyers, I knew their reluctance to act on this file would cost them. Voters were sick of cash for access fundraisers with Premier Clark and other cabinet ministers. Real estate developers were some of the biggest donors, and it gave British Columbians the impression that it was developers and the real estate industry at large that were running this province. And of course, these lax laws also allowed municipal parties like Gregor Robertson's Vision Vancouver to take in massive amounts of cash. One famous instance was when local condo king Bob Rennie hosted a $25,000 plate lunch back in 2014. That's why I crusaded against the BC Liberals' apathy on this prior to and during the election campaign. And all the governing party would do was suggest a commission to study political donations after the election. The federal model implemented by Stephen Harper and the Conservatives was right there in front of them for them to copy the entire time, but they got greedy and it cost them. And now, despite the NDP's promises to reform the system after decrying the BC Liberals' approach while at the same time taking massive sums of money from US-based trade unions, the NDP are now in power and, well, we are headed for something far worse than the old system. Oh, we will get a ban on corporate and union donations and a $1,200 cap on individual donations, but all taxpayers will now be subsidizing elections. Premier Horgan finally introduced a bill to reform election financing, and this bill provides $27.5 million in taxpayer subsidies to the three parties in the legislature over the next 4 to 5 years. Now, this is a complete flip-flop for Horgan, who promised that the changes he would make would not include taxpayer subsidizing elections. Horgan was even on record telling Radio NL and Kamloops back in January that individuals, not the taxpayer, would be financing elections under an NDP government.
Just to be clear, there is going to be nothing in there about sort of taxpayers having to fund political parties.
Yeah, that's correct. What we proposed is that Elections BC will look across the country and around the world at the best way to make sure that only individuals are paying for our political process and our election process. That's what we've said in the past. That's what we're going to say in February. And that's what we're going to do after the May election when we form the next government.
Mark this one down as Horgan's first big lie. But it's really Andrew Weaver and the Green Party who are benefiting from this change the most. The Green Party will now receive $2.82 million of tax dollars over the next 4 years. And that's a number they could never dream of fundraising on their own. That's why this is such a slap in the face of taxpayers. We are essentially having the NDP bribe their partners, the Green Party, with tax dollars to keep their tentative agreement steady. But we're also in mid-September now, and the NDP have had power for a few months. And if this issue was as important as the NDP made it out to be during the election, why did it take this long to introduce changes? Well, that's because Premier Horgan had to squeeze in a few of his own cash for access fundraisers before the new rules were implemented. Anyone who believed Andrew Weaver or John Horgan were sincere after the election when they said that they would do politics differently has been swiftly duped. For the Rebel.media, I'm Christopher Wilson. Like I said, the BC Destroyers have only been in for a couple months now, but they are wreaking havoc. Make sure you never miss any of my videos exposing their destruction. Click subscribe on Rebel Canada's YouTube page.